Chris Mackowski for Emerging Civil War, standing here in Vicksburg, Mississippi with my good friend Garry Adelman. And first of all, I'm super excited to be in Vicksburg with you.
Totally, this is a first.
This is fantastic. Now, most people know you as a Gettysburg guy, but here we are in Vicksburg. What's your impression of being in Vicksburg?
So Vicksburg rules. This is probably my maybe 12th trip to Vicksburg, and I love it every time I come. I know I say this a lot, I love this place, I love that place, but I love Vicksburg, and I have no problem saying that, the center of the Vicksburg Park, especially once they did the clearing operations in 2012 or something like that, I think it's about the most understandable and easily interpreted and maybe coolest part of any Civil War battlefield.
Now, I'm sure you get this a lot, like Gettysburg or Vicksburg, and they sort of assume you got to be a Gettysburg guy, right?
Yeah. I've always considered it a false choice. Like, why can't I love both of them? Which I do, by the way. But if you're talking about import, I don't know how many times I can say it on video. Vicksburg's more important than Gettysburg. Vicksburg's more important than Gettysburg. Vicksburg's more important than Gettysburg. I don't know how people even compare the two in terms of result. Now, you could say what could have happened at Gettysburg could have been very important and maybe equaling Vicksburg, but that didn't happen. That the Union performed forced, the situation back to the status quo as far as I'm concerned, but Vicksburg cut the Confederacy into, for real, not sort of figuratively. They had no way to get their beef and their salt and all their goods across the Mississippi anymore. Those states were out of the game. They had to try to do it in Florida. And nothing that happened at Gettysburg was remotely that consequential.
Now, you've talked about, the import of the river. And right now we've got the Yazoo Canal behind us. The actual Mississippi comes into the Yazoo, or the Yazoo comes into the Mississippi down to my right about a mile or so. But you've talked about the importance of the Mississippi and its place in America's overall history, in the war's overall strategy. Talk about that a little bit.
Well, I can do no more than the people of the past who struggled to come up with a way to describe it as important as it is. People often use that Lincoln said, see all that land those fellows hold, of which Vicksburg is the key, and the war can't be brought to a close until that key is in our pocket. But other people struggled to do it. Sherman said, I would slay millions for the Mississippi River, and on that point, I'm not only insane, but mad. Jefferson Davis, Vicksburg is the nail that holds the two halves of the Confederacy together. Rose Greenhow, something to the effect of, to lose the Mississippi is to lose our Confederacy. The father of waters, the mighty Mississippi, the trunk of the tree that feeds all of America, the spinal cord of 19th century America. I don't know how we could try to top that. They struggled to describe just how important this was, and I think so it proved to be.
And they weren't being hyperbolic about that.
No, they were not. Hold on, I have to look up hyperbolic. I'm not prone to hyperbolicism.
So as we go to explore Vicksburg and just kind of soak it in, are there particular things that you look for when you come here, spots you love to visit?
Yes, so you have to decide when you come here. This isn't a one-day trip or anything, especially if you want to do the campaign. As far as the Vicksburg and park itself, I'm always a fan of trying to spend as much time on the battlefield as possible. Navy Circle is a great place to start, and when you're in the park, at a minimum, Battery de Gaulier, the Shirley House, Illinois Monument, 3rd Louisiana Redan area, the Great Redoubt, Stockade Redan if it's open, National Cemetery, Cairo. Spend time in the museum and at it. And then, of course, the Railroad Redoubt. And then you'll have covered the park pretty well. In town, there's a couple of Civil War museums in town to check out. But then on the campaign, if you're able, spend a little time at Port Gibson and Champion Hill and Raymond and Jackson. If you have to choose, at least hit Champion Hill, because it helps you understand the campaign. And man, if you can do Champion Hill, you can do anywhere. If you can figure out where to park, where to walk, and which way you're looking, you're ahead of most people.
As you're talking there, and I kind of think about that false choice of Gettysburg or Vicksburg, and it sort of makes me think in terms of visitation, where Gettysburg tends to get the benefit of being close to population centers. It's easy to get there. It's well known, familiar to folks. Vicksburg a little less so. How do you think that impacts our modern understanding or memory of Vicksburg?
Yeah, I think that there are some very concrete modern aspects that impact it, but I'll just go back to the beginning. I mean, this went back to 1861, where the Union captured 100,000 square miles of territory and then sort of lost one battle on the Virginia Peninsula. And it was as if it was all undone. Like, the Confederates are obviously winning this war now. And Lincoln couldn't believe it. And it's been happening ever since. I would say in Gettysburg case too, it's not just close to the population center. It happens to have the distinction of having all these casualties. It happens to have the Gettysburg Address. It happens to have been well photographed afterward, unlike this place. And it happens to be the first Civil War battlefield that was preserved as a park, not by the government, but by private citizens. So those 5 things have conspired, plus that Gettysburg happens to have icons. It's not an uninteresting place, just like Vicksburg, but it has everything going for it, and therefore, ever since 1863, there have been Western sites saying, look at me, look at the news at Vicksburg and Port Hudson is important, but alas.
Well, I'm excited to explore this battlefield with you. In particular, this is going to be a great couple days for us, and I want to invite you to make your way to Vicksburg, because it is a fantastic battlefield, great sights to see, and as Garry says, lots to explore.
And I'll just say, you can do it in a day if you have to. So if you only have a day, I don't know why you would come here and only spend a day, but you can do it pretty well in 2 days. You can certainly make 3 out of it as well.
So, with my thanks to Garry, I'm Chris Mackowski for Emerging Civil War. Thanks to Chris White behind the camera at this moment. We'll see you online and on the battlefield.